My name is Bear Saragusa, and this is the Hunting Hound podcast presented by W Hunting Supply.
All right. Clint, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, Bear. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. It's been playing yeah, it's like having a baby in the house. I've got this beagle pup that I picked up on Tuesday, and he is falling asleep on my lap, I think, as we speak. He's just finished pooping all over the floor. So hopefully things will just go in the right direction from here.
I'm not so jealous of the pooping all over the floor, but I could go for a beagle pup on the lap right about now.
So, but you have the Bethel Hill Beagles is your kennel.
Yep.
And I've seen you I first stumbled across you on Instagram. You've got a pretty good presence there, and you've put out some really nice video clips and some really, really nice pictures. Tell me a little bit about your kennel, your setup, and your background in beagles. I guess tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, just start off born and raised here in Western Pennsylvania. Back in, let's say, the early '80s, Dad kind of got into the beagles, and most of my childhood growing up, we ran beagles quite a bit, mainly just hunting. We did dabble in the trial circuit for probably about 6 or 7 years. Kind of got burned out on that a little bit, but
okay, yeah.
But mainly, say just out in the old pasture and the old rundown farms, and rounding up some rabbits every fall and winter.
Right. So, have you had beagles yourself since the 80s? Like, I actually don't know how old you are. Were you even alive in the 80s?
Early 80s. Yep. I see. Yeah, right after high school, I kind of got out of beagles for about 20 years.
Okay. Yep.
Kind of pursuing other interests, and it was actually 2 years ago whenever I got back into them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And what was it that made you get back into the beagles? What got you started again?
Probably the biggest driving factor would be the family. I got 3 young kids right now, 2, 3, and 5 years old.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Part of my fondest memories growing up was, out there running dogs with Dad, and spending times in the woods and playing in the creeks, and just being a kid outdoors. And I wanted to kind of provide that for my family as well.
Sure.
So kind of, I knew I wanted to get back into a hunting dog, style of outdoors.
Yep.
Kind of pondered pretty hard on, between the pheasant dogs or the squirrel dogs or beagles. That's really the main options in Pennsylvania. I mean, you got the coon hunters out here and the coyote hunters, but primarily the hounds are either upland or rabbit and squirrel.
Sure.
But
well, that makes sense. Was your dad in the beagles the entire time? Like, when you got back into beagles, did you go via him, or did you go via something? Did you get kind of your own thing going there?
He kind of tapered off as well. It was probably, I think, 4 or 5 years after I got out of high school. He kind of hung up the spurs, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of got on Facebook and just asking around, kind of looking for different breeders, and ended up running into a guy. Really set me on a good path. He's down out of Slippery Rock, and probably about a half hour away or so, and ended up getting a female off of him almost 2 years ago, and kind of went under his wing a little bit, getting her started. I definitely didn't appreciate having an established pack growing up for starting a pup, because it's a whole
Sure.
different ball game when you're starting from scratch.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. When how old are you've got two at this point, correct?
Yep. Two. One's she just turned 2 years old, and then the other one will be a year here end of June.
Both females.
Both females. Yep. Starting to get some.
Was that a deliberate choice to pick females, or
Yep.
what? I've been curious about that because this pup that I just got, it was actually the breeder was, and it's a standard practice here that the male pups are sold, $100 cheaper, to
Yeah,
$200 cheaper than
that's
the
common here
female
as
pups.
well.
Is that right? Why is that? I'm a little bit curious about it. 'Cause in the sled dog world, it's completely opposite, where you can't give the females away, but the males
Wow.
are the absolute premium animal. What is it about the female hunting dogs that makes it, or let's stick to beagles, I guess. What is it about the female beagles that makes them the
Well,
more sort of prized commodity?
the first thing would be you're getting litters on your schedule.
Right.
It's the dog schedule, but you have the ultimate say on when that litter's coming. Hopefully.
Right.
I've always found the females, you may not get the upper end athleticism as much as the males. They're usually a little easier to control, a little
Okay.
not as
Yep.
stubborn, not quite as stubborn. Take that with a grain of salt with a beagle. They're they kind of march to the beat of their own drums.
Yeah, they're the donkey of the dog world. Yeah, I grew up with a beagle, and they're something else. They're really, I love the breed. They're quirky, funny little dogs.
Oh yeah, just huge heart, a lot of drive, but
Yep.
kind of grinds on you a little bit when you're calling at them. They just kind of pick their head up and look at you and like, no, I'm doing this.
Right. Yeah. It's like I was talking to Becky Dwyer here a couple of days ago, and she's like, you don't know, half the time you don't know whether to hug them or strangle them. It's like
Yeah, that's a pretty fair statement.
that's pretty fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but did you put a litter on your first beagle? What is her name, by the way?
The first one's Melody, and no, she's not been bred yet. She actually just had her second heat here about a month ago. Gotta wrap that up.
Oh, okay. And so the second one is uh not related to her, at least not descended from her.
Not descended from her, no. She would actually be kind of like a great aunt.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, Melody's mother would be Cadence's grandmother.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
guess just
Yeah,
half aunt, not great aunt. Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Cool.
So similar background, but you're definitely looking to offshoot a little bit for the male that I picked up here
Right.
next year or so.
Are you're gonna pick up a male?
Yep.
Yep.
That's the game plan.
Gotcha. I was reading something recently about. I've been reading up on beagles. Just I read everything about really any hound I can get my hands on. But I read something recently where they were talking about the history of the beagle, and we're talking about there was a little bit of a divide between, or there's a divide has been created now between what was the sort of standard beagle, like the British beagle, what the beagle originally was, and what the beagle has turned into in the States. But I have not been able to see anything to back that up. Like what are the size of the beagles you're running right now? Like how tall are they at the shoulder?
Cadence the pup, she's going to be a little bit smaller. I'd be surprised if she makes 11-inch, but Melody's just short of 13.
Okay. Yep.
But there's guys running 15-inch dogs. Around this, it's not unheard of, but I've always kind of liked the smaller dog, especially in some of the thick, nasty crap that we like to run in.
Yeah. Right.
They tend to fare a little better. I mean, they still get cut up, but
That's interesting because the beagles here, a lot of them, there's a couple of traditional Norwegian breeds that are used for the rabbit hunting. So like
mhm.
the Dunker Hound is one of those breeds, and it's sort of a compact. It looks a lot like a harrier in some ways. It looks like a sort of a. It can even get that kind of Catahoula coloring, but it's about the size of a harrier, kind of a stocky dog, vaguely beagle-like, but much bigger than a beagle.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of the people who like to do the hare hunting here and the rabbit hunting here do that with the Dunker because it's the Norwegian breed. The beagles over here, a lot of them are used for. I would actually go as far as to say the majority of them are used for hunting the red deer and the roe deers that we have over here.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um, and you would think then that they would get to be a little bit bigger, but the beagles that I've seen over here have been quite a bit smaller than even the males are smaller than the beagle I grew up with, who was a female.
Wow.
And she was 13 inches maybe, but the beagles here, I would be surprised if, like, the mother of the beagle that's sleeping on my lap right now, I would be surprised if she was more than 9 or 10 inches at the shoulder.
Wow, that's little.
Yeah, she's real little, but she had 10 puppies, like this humongous litter. And I mean, none of them they didn't need, formula or anything. She was able to take care of all 10 of them
Wow,
without any
that's
problems.
awesome.
It was amazing. I couldn't believe it.
Now, how do those little dogs handle the snow over there? You guys get a fair amount of snow, don't you?
We do. And that's kind of the funny thing is that,
Is it almost so small they just stay on top, or?
yeah, that's kind of the funny thing is that sometimes they look like otters kind of pushing themselves. Their legs kind of end up on the side. They sort of slide along on their tummies. But, um, it seems like, they're certainly not going to be able to handle the deep snow like like the Walker I have, or like the Plot or anything like that. But
Mhm.
but they're able to handle the snow better than I would have expected them to. And that is one thing that I have noticed, is that even on the mother of this pup, which is 2 or 3, realistically 3 or 4 inches shorter than the beagle that I had when I was growing up, her feet are twice the size.
Wow.
So I don't know whether that's just specific to the line, or whether maybe they bred them specifically to be a little bit better in the
Might have been
snow.
bred out of necessity, kind of in your
Yeah,
area.
maybe just whether it was deliberate or just kind of out of sort of natural selection of breeding the dogs that function the best to the dogs that function the best. Because the other thing is that there's not really a tradition um, for running big packs here. And I actually have a confession to make, and then that's that when I started with hounds, I was told that um, it was only allowed to run one dog here in Norway. And that's something that I have repeated multiple times on the podcast. And it wasn't until yesterday a somebody asked me where I'd gotten that information. And
Mhm.
I spent, like, not even joking, 3 or 4 hours trying to find where I had read this, because in addition to having been told this, I had also read it somewhere,
Okay.
and I could not for the life of me find it. So it was a listener of the podcast, a Norwegian guy whose English is excellent, Torleif Thorsen, contacted me and asked, "Where did I hear this?" And after about 4 hours, I had to admit that I can't remember, like, I can't find my source. So what I ended up doing is I ended up calling several people in the know, and they were like, "Yeah, we've heard you say that a couple times, and we never totally understood that. It's a tradition that we don't use more than one, but it's technically allowed."
Oh wow. Well, that's going to
And
open up a few more options for you.
oh my gosh. So I've been going around like some butthead here. And like to totally make sure I called the authorities today just to like double check. And was like, am I understanding this correctly? And they're like, you are totally understanding this correctly. It is allowed to hunt several, but you're going to run into problems if your dogs catch and kill. So it's better to run one. You can run several, but if they catch the game, you're going to have problems.
I see.
So, on a totally side note, to all of my listeners who have heard me say 50 times that it's only allowed to run one dog here in Norway, it turns out that that was incorrect. It is allowed to run multiple dogs in Norway, but there is not a tradition for it, which is embarrassing for me to have to admit that. I will bring on the angry comments here because I have screwed up big time because I've run my own hounds based off of this thought that it was only allowed to run one hound. So I've been like trying to get this. I have this buzz dog who got bitten in the face by a fox and stopped running. He was doing, just really, really, really well. I was really pleased with his development. And then he got bitten first day of the season last year, so August 16th, got popped in the nose by a fox that he dragged out of a hole by its tail and stopped running, like completely stopped. I couldn't get him to go out, to hunt away from me. He would just kind of walk behind me in the woods, completely lost his mojo.
Just full on shell shocked.
Completely just like did not see that coming and just could not get over it.
Now, do you think maybe getting them out with another dog might rekindle that spark a little bit?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Because I haven't done that because it's, technically it's not allowed. In my head, I've been functioning under this apparently misconception that it was not allowed, and it's technically allowed, but it's there's not a tradition for it, which was enough to completely confuse me, and may, and so yeah, it's gonna change. It's a game changer for me. I'm gonna see if I can get the dog out with a dog that's gonna maybe boost his confidence a little bit because I busted my butt all of last year. That happened in August, and it wasn't until March that he started hunting a little bit again. And I've been working on him, but I think being able to run him with another dog that's actually firing on all cylinders is going to be a game changer. And so I'm excited about that.
A little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited about it at the same time as being horribly embarrassed about having the wrong information for so long. Oh my gosh. But it's also something that I was thinking about, when I got, this all happened day before, I guess it was yesterday. But it's been something I've been thinking about, with, the beagles, that it would be awfully nice to be able to run several beagles at a time.
Oh, absolutely.
You started out with the one beagle. Were you able to start her before you got the second beagle, or did you kind of start them together?
No, I had her fully started probably about 7.5 months.
Yep.
And I actually hunted over her the latter half of the first hunting season. Got a few rabbits, but once the ice and the snow rolled in, it kind of shut her down. Then we hit the ground running all last spring, and she really picked it up. And then, like I say, I got the pup last year. And then I was able to hunt a full hunting season last year with Melody, and we did pretty well. But I'm really looking forward to this year because the pup really started showing interest end of January. I was out there trying to get her going like on the weeknights. So I only had like an hour to kill, and I didn't want to get all geared up and go hunting, so I just could run the dogs, out behind the house. And then we got hit with a major snowstorm end of January, and we had like 18 inches on the ground at one point.
Oh wow!
Which for us is like once in a decade type of deal. I mean, we typically get a couple 3-4 inches and it's gone within a week.
Right. Yeah.
And it,
It's
it, it lasted the entire month of February. It just
wow.
Melody still struggled getting her snow nose established, and it was a little slow. But as soon as spring thaw hit, I got the pup out, and that light bulb just clicked, and they're firing on all cylinders right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What
But
is the season like there? Like when can you start hunting and when can you stop? And is there like a shoulder season where you can train? Like how does that work in
we
in
can pretty much cut the dogs loose year round. Uh,
Mhm.
Middle of October to the end of February is our hunting season, except for the 2 weeks of rifle season for deer, and there's Christmas Day you're off.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's actually pretty comparable to Norway. We've got 2 weeks where it's set off for the moose hunters and other or
Mhm.
I'm gonna actually be a little bit careful here because I've been speaking fairly confidently about something that apparently I knew nothing about. So here where I live, they set aside the 2 weeks
Mhm.
for specifically for the moose hunters. And then but unlike there, we don't have the possibility there's no training season. The entire season it's the hunting season and that's it. You can't even let them off. You can't train them even in the shoulder seasons when there's which would be between I guess April and September.
Wow,
Where
that's
gonna be there's going to be the leash laws are quite strict here, based off of a lot of livestock still goes up to the mountains and grazes in the mountains.
okay.
So they don't want to run into issues with dogs, preying on livestock.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it makes sense, but one thing the locals have done is that they've made it mandatory to get a livestock breaking course done with your dog, where you take them
Okay,
and get them broken off of livestock with a shock collar.
so
And
you can use a shock collar for that, but you can't use it while you're hunting, correct?
we can't use it. We have to go to somebody who is
Oh, okay. You have to go like a
certified. Yeah,
certified trainer.
exactly. Who is certified for use in specifically that thing.
Now, if you had your certificate to be a trainer, could you use it while you're hunting?
No, it's specific to in this area. It's specific to sheep.
Okay.
In other areas of Norway, where they have the tame, like the domestic reindeer, you can get it
Hmm.
for reindeer, and I think that
Okay.
there are actually some areas where you can get it for roe deer, where there's so many roe deer that it's sort of a necessity.
Yeah.
However, um, I would only be able to do it if I got my certificate for it, I would only be able to do it in sort of the instances of breaking them off of sheep, specifically in this area. Um, is my understanding of it anyway. There are a lot of laws and a lot of rules here that I yeah, spend. Oh, yeah, it's not always so easy apparently
No.
to keep track of what it is. But my understanding of it is that I cannot get certified and then put a you know put a shock collar on my dogs to break them off of trash or something like that. I think it's got to be
Hmm.
fairly specific to the breaking them off of domestic livestock in a very controlled sort of uh, training situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So like the way they've done it here is, how I did it with my Russian hound was I would go and meet somebody at a sheep paddock,
Okay.
and they would put, like a long line on it,
Hmm.
on my hound, with a collar and shock collar, the works. And I would drop the long line. The long line's there, so if the dog goes completely berserk, you have some chance of catching it. But
Uh-huh.
then it's gauged. They gauge it based off of what the dog's reaction is to the sheep. You walk into a flock of sheep, and if the dog shows anything other than, basic sight interest, it can look at the sheep, but if it takes any steps deliberately towards the sheep, it's going to get shocked.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to be shocked. You're going to need to come back again and again and again until it walks through that flock of sheep without making any effort to go and interact with them in any way.
Hmm.
So I mean, and it works. It's not fun. It's not fun to see, because most dogs are going to want to go and at least investigate a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
But then they're going to
Especially
get
they start skittering away and engage that prey drive a little bit.
right, exactly, and but then they're going to get lit up for that, and so it's not a nice process, but in the end, it does save, it does save a lot of headaches, because the fox hunting season here will start the 15th of August. But the
Okay.
sheep are not going to be the sheep and the cows and things like that are not going to be taken down from the mountains where they're doing, where they're grazing, until, September sometime.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, with the first few weeks of the hunting season, they're everywhere.
Hmm.
So if you have a dog that's going to go after sheep, you're going to run into problems real quick.
Yeah, I'd say so. So from April to August, it's no running at all then.
Not at all. Nope. We can train them. At that point, it's, jogging with them, having them on bikes in front of four-wheelers, something like that.
Just conditioning, pretty much.
Just conditioning training. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So, which is a little bit of a bummer. I would love to have something, something they could run. In the meantime, at least I can see the point. I can see the argument for not letting some of the big game hounds
Hmm.
run. But like a beagle, the bassets, the dachshunds, the shorter legged dogs that are not really don't really have the possibility to run anything into the ground,
Yeah.
like at least my walker can. I do wish that there was the possibility to train them, but there's, at this point, there's not, at least not in my area.
But they have like starter pens in your area. Guys have a rabbit at least to
Yeah,
the pup started on, or
yeah, you would think that would be a big deal here, because I mean, there's plenty of them. You can find them in the States, but that is hard to find here.
wow.
Yeah, which it has surprised me enough to make me think that, the thought has crossed my mind to be like, you know, get some hair, pen them in, quit my day job, and just do that for the rest of my life. I don't know if it would work, but on
Yeah,
the long days
that'd
at
be
work, I can sit and dream.
it'd be a nice gig.
It would be a nice gig. So, but so what I'm a little bit interested, before I sort of go into what a hunt would look like here. I'm interested to hear, like, break down from, you get up, you eat breakfast, you get ready to go, load up the dogs, drive to where you're going to run. What does a hunt look like for you?
Uh, like an actual hunt, or more like a training hunt, or
Like a hunt, hunt. Like when you're going to go out, what does it look like?
uh, ideally not raining, which almost never happens.
Sure.
Load the dogs up. And one thing nice about Pennsylvania is we do have a lot of state game lands. So there's a lot of available ground open to the public that we can go to.
Is that right? Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. I try to hunt as much private as possible, but especially during the early season, you got the bow hunters out there. They're mainly on the private ground, and just to kind of keep everybody happy. Most of the time in the early season, I'll just go hit the game lands where there's still guys, but at least they don't get as bent out of shape as bad. But
sure. No, I mean that makes sense. I was talking to in the last podcast that aired, I think. I was talking to Nick Gilliland about that.
mm-hmm.
And he runs the coon hounds, and he is really struggling to find big enough tracts of land to actually be able to get the job done. He's having to tone his dog off of raccoons, fairly frequently when he's doing, the dog's doing everything it's supposed to be doing, but he's still having to tone them off because it's approaching the, property boundary. So he's struggling to find an area that's big enough to run on. But you don't have that problem, or
Not as bad. The beagles, they don't, at least for the cottontails, you start getting into the hares. We got small pockets up in the northern central counties of the state that'll actually have snowshoes.
Mm-hmm.
They can range out a little bit more, but it's also a less dense populated area. It's more national forest.
Sure. Okay.
So it's not as big of a deal down here. At least where I'm at, is a lot of kind of like patchwork farms. We still have some smaller farms, but we're starting to see the bigger guys kind of gobble up all the little guys. And
right. Yeah.
Your old fence rows, they used to divide farms, and nice brush lines. They used to hold a ton of rabbits. They're not there that much anymore. I mean,
okay.
I mean, you still have certain pockets, but it's not as densely populated as I remember back in like the late 80s, early 90s. We seem to have more rabbits, but we can still find them. Just got to walk a little bit more.
Yep. When you say walk a little bit more, are you walking with your dogs the entire time? Like, how does that work? I'm a little bit curious about that, because I see, like, here it's not uncommon that somebody will actually make a campfire and sit waiting for their dog to sort of bust off and do its own thing and find a hare, because that's what we've got, at least as far north as I am. That's what we've got, is the hare.
We're mainly walking with them. They're fanning out as we're going kind of down the trails or down the fence lines, whatnot. And typically, once they jump a rabbit and get it on its feet, it's going to circle back around or bend up.
Mm-hmm.
But we just kind of fan out in the general area that the rabbit was jumped in, and it should come back through. And then if it makes a full loop and you see, okay, he's 20 yards over to the right or 30 yards to the left, just kind of start working your way over there. And they're running about 200, 300, 400 yard circles. I mean, it's nothing huge.
Right. Okay. Do you tend to hunt with a bunch of other people, or are you generally hunting alone? How does that work for you?
I wouldn't say a bunch of other people. We might get 2 or 3 guys together. Maybe 5, 6, 7 dogs tops.
Sure.
But if you get a lot of guys, then you really got to start watching your shots. I mean, it's between the hunting party and the dogs, and you start getting 12 different people or dogs you're thinking about in a 100-yard area. You really got to watch your shots.
Right. Yeah, I can see that getting a little bit too close for comfort.
Yeah. But typically we're like I say 1, 2, maybe 3 guys. will go out with me.
Yeah. And when you go out with your family, what does that look like?
Uh, well, with my kids, it's not hunting season; it's just running season.
Mhm.
But it's try to get my dad out there, and I got a couple cousins that are pretty big into hunting. We'll try to get together a couple times a year and make a day of it.
Yep.
But the kids is more. They're not big enough to really participate in the actual shooting
Right.
aspect of it. Still
You
got a few more years.
mean you're not giving your 5-year-old a 12 gauge?
No, not yet. Yeah, we'll start them off with the 16 first.
My grandfather was wanted so badly to go deer hunting with his father. His father was a big sort of Maine deer camp, sort of traditional style deer hunter.
Mhm.
And after a couple of years, he started like complaining about this when he was about 3 years old, and by the time he was 6, my great grandfather was like, "Ah, you know what? Okay, just to get you to shut up, I'll bring you along."
Yeah.
And first day he was just psyched to be along, and then after about a day he was like, everyone else is carrying a gun, and I don't have anything. This doesn't seem fair to me. And the what to hear him tell the story, his father gave him a 12 gauge, and he was just a bitty little guy, and he was just luck of the draw, ended up having a deer walk by him, way out of shotgun range, but he didn't know that.
Hmm.
And this was like an old double barrel with 2 triggers, and he managed to hit both of them and just
Oh boy.
knocked himself into the next century, and completely lost any desire he ever had to hunt deer again.
So you're saying that gun kills on one end and maims on the other?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can't remember how old I was when he told me that story, but yeah, he that was it for him. He was done. But so
Yeah, when I
what
was hunting,
are you running, a 20 gauge or a 410, or what do you run for?
um, currently running the 20 gauge over under.
Yep.
Yeah, little CZ upland. Nice
That's a
little.
that's a good gun. Yeah.
It is nice and light, and I wouldn't recommend taking to the skeet range and shooting 100 plays with it, but for carrying through the brush, it's a nice light little gun that gets it done.
Yeah. No, there's something to be said for that. It's we've got a lot of alder brush here. We don't have the kind of the sort of pricker brush thickets
Hmm.
like it seems like you guys get quite a bit. We'll have
Oh
the
yeah, we get the multi-floor rose and the blackberries and raspberries, and
yeah,
it's.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're head to toe in briar-proof clothing just to make it through some of this crap.
Yeah, right. And we don't get as much of that. We've got the blackberries, got the raspberries, but they're not as common. They're in little patches here and there. But
Hmm.
what we've got is the alderbrush, which the dogs can make it through fine, the hares can make it through fine, but it's like, above your knees, it's just this
Hmm.
impenetrable mass of just crap. It's so hard to get through. Um, and yeah, I've got a what is it called? A Lambert over under,
Hmm.
real light, real short, and it's just a gun that I absolutely love, specifically for that reason, that I'm not walking through these alder brushes with a big, long, heavy shotgun,
Yeah.
because I'm never going to have those long distance, 60-yard shots at anything. That's
Hmm.
never going to happen. It's always going to be 10, 15.
Yeah.
I don't I don't need something, I don't need a
Yeah.
gun that I would hunt pheasants with. It's like it's not necessary.
No, I've actually been contemplating getting like a little 28 gauge. for when my oldest boy gets a little bit older.
Yeah.
Of course, you got to justify it, but he needs a gun, so he can take
Right.
Dad's over under. And
Right. Exactly. I'll just get something new. Why not?
yeah,
Yep. Now
but
my oldest son has just started shooting. Has just started shooting himself, and he's shooting sort of light load. But he's shooting a 12 gauge, but it's sort of light loads,
mhm,
and that's going pretty well. He he's little enough, so it was hard to find a gun that sort of worked for him. But I
yeah, kind of
cut
fit him.
a pretty small 12 gauge, cut it down to sort of as small as I could without totally ruining it, and that
Yeah,
that's fitting him all right.
the nice thing about the 12 is it is pretty versatile. I mean, you can have a lot of game with the 12 gauge.
Yeah, it's a great caliber for most things. I think for especially when you're talking about the snowshoe hares, they're pretty big.
Hmm.
The I think the I would almost certainly have something different if I was hunting cottontails, just because even with a light load, a 12
Yeah, you
gauge,
can.
there's not going to be much left.
No, you're wrecking them pretty hard.
So but the hares, they're so big that they can absorb a pretty big load without and you'll still have a little bit of meat left anyway.
Hmm. Now the woods you're hunting hares, is it kind of open or pretty dense or?
It's pretty dense. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you can kind of get into that sort of open pine forest in some areas, but they do a lot of sustainable logging here. So,
Hmm.
if you get into something that's a little bit more old growth, then it opens up a little bit, but for the most part, you're going to be in the brush. You're going to have that
Yeah.
half a second
Hmm.
to react, and
Yeah,
then
get that snapshot.
yep, then it's gone. And they're the big snowshoe hare, so they're gonna do some big loops, and it's not always gonna work out for you. But again, the beagles here are going to be used from more often than not on roe deer and the red deer.
Now, how do those deer handle? I mean, I got pretty limited experience with anything other than a whitetail. I mean, if
Sure.
they see something, they're kind of out of the country in no time. I mean,
Yeah. The red deer are a little bit like that. You know, they'll they're not going to hang around and sort of take any chances. Um,
mhm,
so then with a red deer. If you want to take one for the beagle, it's going to be kind of a driven hunt type of a
mm,
deal where you're going to have some people posted along the most likely corridors of travel
yep,
and try to get them as they're leaving the country, basically.
yeah,
Um, the roe deer are a little bit different. It's actually really difficult for me to see the difference between a roe deer and, this is just pure inexperience, but a roe deer and a hare, because the roe deer will do loops as well.
oh, that's handy.
And the roe deer tend to go a little bit longer than the hare, but if you've got a roe deer that's content to do little loops, there's been a couple of times where I've been waiting for my, I would like to say that I was intentionally hunting them when it's not going to be the truth. Waiting for my walker to walk by me with what I thought was a hare, and it ended up being a roe deer, and vice versa. Um, running for her, what for her would be trash. But and honestly, that was part of why I decided to go for a beagle. There was a bunch of reasons for it, and one of them being the same as what you talked about, is wanting the good family dog, because they are such good family dogs. And
Oh, yeah. Now, if a mouse breaks wind 2 counties over, they're going to let you know about it. But they are a great family dog.
yeah, no, I mean, and the other thing was that here in Norway, because they've got the limit of 41 centimeters, which is, I don't even know what that would be in inches. But it's the limit of 41 centimeters to be allowed to run deer. So a beagle,
They can't be over 41 centimeters.
that's right. Yep.
Okay.
If they're over 41 centimeters, which is 16 inches, then you can't legally run deer with them.
That's interesting.
It is. It's which I kind of understand, because anything shorter than 41 centimeters, or 16 inches, it's even going full blast is not going to be able to pressure a deer to the point where it's gonna, blow a gasket.
Run it down. Yeah.
Right.
It's got enough time to stop and kind of catch his breath and look back. And
Right. Exactly. The dog's going to be moving slow, in relation to a dog that's, 30 centimeters at the shoulder, or 30 inches at the shoulder, so, but, that's what attracted me a little bit to the beagle, is that it's short enough so that I can run deer if I want to, but it's also still a full blown. I mean, it's a proper hound.
mm-hmm.
It's not. It doesn't have some deformity that they've continued to breed into the dog. It doesn't have, misshapen front legs and things like that. A spine
Just
that
big
it can't.
paws.
Right, exactly. It doesn't have a spine that it can't possibly support. Things like that. Very few health problems. It just seemed like sort of the ideal dog, all in all. Being in the situation that I'm in with, 2 kids that are 9 and 7 years old and interested in hunting themselves. Yeah, I mean, they're really excited about it, because ultimately the fox hunting stopped being as much fun for them as I had hoped that it would be. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that, as soon as we got even a little bit of snow, walking a mile and a half into a den stopped being fun for a 6-year-old. It was like,
that doesn't sound like fun for me. So
yeah, right, exactly. It was like, even for me, it was like, cinch up the belt, take a deep breath, and put your head down and just do it. For the 6-year-old, it was like, why are we doing this?
Yeah. Oh no, they'll have a blast chasing the hare.
I'm really looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to go down to, you don't have to go that far from here. Here we've only got the hare, but I don't think I need to go more than, well, I mean, I have seen and hunted the rabbits 3 hours from here, 3 hours farther south.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So it doesn't take me that long to get to an area where there's going to be a lot of rabbit.
The nice thing about that, you get the kids out there and you get a hare up on his feet. I mean, it's going to bring it back around. So, I mean, you can stand there and talk. I mean, like, I take my 5-year-old out. He spends more time smacking trees with sticks and playing in the creek than he does actually watching the dogs or the rabbits.
Right. That sounds familiar.
That's the one nice thing about, one of the reasons that drew me back into the beagles is, I'm not putting a kid in a blind and forcing him to be quiet for hours on end. Not there's anything wrong with that. It's just I want him to be a kid out in the woods and explore and
right.
Just have fun.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. I totally understand that. The exact same train of thought. Yeah.
I had to laugh here a couple weeks ago. I had my oldest out with me, and you can tell when the dogs turn, just by the sound of the pitch of the bark, and when the rabbit's starting to come back towards you, and so you're like, shh, the rabbit's coming. Time to be quiet. And Yeah, 5-year-old holds his attention for the whole 10 seconds, and he's wailing on his tree again with whatever stick he's got. But for whatever reason, he actually was quiet and saw the rabbit, come by, about 10 feet in front of him. And as soon as it went by and the dogs ran by, he turned to me and was just big bug-eyed, and he's like, "Dad, when I'm quiet, we see wild animals." Like, yeah, I've been trying to tell you that for a year now.
Right. It's like, yeah, it's funny how that works. Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah,
I mean, it's such a good, it seems like, it just seems like such a great dog for getting kids bought in. And, that's the stage I'm in at this
Yep.
point is, I got into the hounds myself, after my kids were already born, after a long career with sled dogs. And, I've had a lot of fun with the big hounds, the tall hounds, and I'm going to keep, I'm going to keep foxhounds around. I'm going to keep big game hounds around. I want to have that as well. But just in terms of a, easily accessible hunt for kids and sort of family oriented hunting, it seems like it's hard to beat the beagles. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are your plans now for the future? Now it sounds like you're solidly back into the game, and you're gonna get a male at some point here. Are you gonna do some breedings yourself, or what's the future
like
for Bethel Hill Beagles?
Just trying to get this line kind of off the ground. Really, trying to do my homework and find some decent breeders to see what lines I want to kind of merge together to kind of form my own.
Sure. What are you looking for? Like what are the criteria that
Mainly healthy, good brains, and a good nose. I mean, I personally, I think it's good to have a bit of a diverse pack. When you, Melody, my older dog, I'd probably consider her more of like an anchor dog. She's going to be, very a little bit more in a medium speed, steady, right on the track. Might be able to, pull the dogs that might blow a corner back on track and keep it rolling. But I like to have a little bit of speed to kind of keep the rabbit up and moving,
mm-hmm.
and just kind of, mesh a little bit of diversity between the dogs we end up getting.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. What is your other dog? What is she called? What's her name?
Cadence.
Cadence.
Yeah.
What does she bring to the table in terms of because it seems like
speed.
the videos you've put out, you've got a pair that work really well together.
Yeah, they're working, they're definitely gelling very nicely. She's actually got a bit more speed. Like, she's definitely more of the kind of corner cutter, mentality. Melody's more of my start dog. She's going to get the rabbits up and moving, and I've gotten a few. I haven't really sold Cadence too terribly much. It's on the to-do list, but it seems like once Melody gets going, Cadence is trying to get out ahead of her as quickly as possible, and she is on the track. I mean, I'll see the rabbit go, and she's right on it, but she definitely has a little bit more speed than Melody's bringing to the table at this point.
Okay, gotcha. It's it's something that I've not had to put a lot of thought into in terms of like building a pack or building a pair. You know, based
now
on
that option.
Yeah, now I've got that option. That's exactly right. So it's interesting to me what people put into how they create pairs. I just talked to a friend of mine who hunts bear with plots in Sweden, and there it's allowed to run two dogs on bear, at least where he's hunting. So they break them into pairs, and it was really, really interesting talking to him about how he kind of goes about creating these pairs of dogs, because they're running these big old brown bears over there. They're not running we don't have black bears in Europe, and the brown bears don't tree, so you would almost think that you'd want these sort of super gritty, you know, gnarly dogs that were able to kind of keep it, get it bait up and
Mhm.
realistically that's not the case. It was really interesting listening to him talk about, how they kind of he's got to match strengths with weaknesses and sort of kind of try to create a pair that has the ability to hang with a bear, but are not going to put so much pressure on it that it's going to turn around and, eat them, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it makes sense. Now,
but go ahead.
what kind of characteristics did the parents of the puppy just picked up have? I mean, did you get to see them run at all, or?
I didn't get to see them, not in person. I saw quite a few. I saw quite a few videos of them both, or of the father running. Um, and the mother was an import from Finland originally.
Oh wow.
Um, and they're both the father is quite a bit bigger than the female. Um, but they both seem to be, they both had managed to get their what they call like the hunting champion status.
Hmm.
And that's through, field trials.
So you do have the
Um,
field trials over there as well, then on hares, or?
they do it on hares, yep, and then they do it on roe deer, and they might do it on the red deer. I'm not actually sure about that, but at least the father got his hunting champion certificate on roe deer, and the mother, I believe, did as well. But that might have been here. I actually need to go back and look.
I'm assuming that's going to be more like the dog's performance to standard. It's not competition dog versus dog.
Well, um,
Kind of like the upland competition versus like how we have the big and little packs over here.
right. Well, I mean, here they're going to be judged individually. So they're not
Yeah,
going to be a part of a pack. They're going to be judged as sort of based
so that'd
off.
be to a standard.
Yeah, exactly. And it's it's a very complex set of rules and sort of things with a total point sum, that's going to sort of decide where the dog falls, whether it's, is what they would call very good or champion, or,
Hmm.
it's something that I haven't actually looked a lot at, mainly because I haven't had a dog that I've had any interest in getting that title with.
Hmm.
I'm hunting for the sheer pleasure of hunting,
Yeah.
and to fill my freezer, ultimately. So the shows and the competitions have not been that interesting to me. I did a little bit of AKC stuff back when I lived in the States, sort of obedience trials type stuff, and I got burnt out real quick. It was not
Yeah.
my deal. I think
Yeah.
I
I can
might.
relate.
Yeah, it's, at that point I was like 12, 13, 14, with just a Labrador that was my buddy, and still, like, I had these like 50-year-old women playing mind games with me, trying to psych me out. And it's just like, you know what, I'm over this. Like, this is just not worth doing. And but with this beagle pup, I'm considering um getting the sort of hunting champion certificate for him,
Hmm.
if I can. I mean, there's no guarantee, but I think it would be interesting to go through that process with him. Um,
Yeah. I'm
but
sure it would
how
help.
are Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure it would help if you decide to breed them or stud them out down the road.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What were the trials like for you? Like, what were you competing in? Were you competing in, because you're gonna have to forgive my ignorance here. There are different types of trials for beagles. There's like brace trials. Isn't that right? Where you've got two at the same time, or how does that work?
I know the AKC has some different styles. I'm just starting to kind of look into that. The guy I got my dogs off of, he's pretty big in the AKC trials, and I haven't ruled out kind of putting my dabble my feet back into that world down the road. But I ran the ARHA trials back in the '90s, and it was mainly 4 or 5 dog packs. Just it's a point scoring system based on jumps, and they'll mark a line where the rabbit cross, and the first dog cross gets so many points, and second dog gets a little bit less, and then there's minus points and a whole bunch of different rules, and then tally it up at the end of the day, and the winner of the pack moves on in the competition until kind of best dog wins.
Okay. Yep. Gotcha. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to be interested to see what the setup is here, because like I said, they don't have the tradition for the packs here.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is that it's individual dogs 1-on-1 that they'll test with points deducted for running off game, like if you go to get it, it's roe deer certificate. If it hunts, if it goes after hare or moose or something like that, that you're going to get points deducted for that.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I don't know a lot about it. It's something that I'm just at this point trying to kind of figure out a little bit. Specifically, yeah. I mean, for the reason that you said, the idea that if this guy ends up being worth the powder to blow him up with, that it might be advantageous to breed him at some point.
Absolutely.
But what was it that made you kind of lose interest in it in the first place? I know what it was that made me lose interest in the AKC's sort of obedience stuff, but what turned you off from the rabbit competitions or the trials?
Part of it was just you did have to do quite a bit of traveling to really start racking the points up if you want to start titling your dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I've always had a problem with say inflated egos.
Mm-hmm.
And just I don't play well with it.
I can understand that. Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't anything horrible. It's just my focus shifted a little bit.
Sure. I mean, that's as good a reason as any. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our dogs growing up were definitely more of the probably the medium to slow style, but they were true to line. And we had one dog we actually put a champion title on him, and he was actually 2 wins away from making grand champion, but all his points were jump points. I mean, he just the competition scene kept getting faster and faster, and then you started seeing these like the slashers coming in, the dogs that they're cutting corners, but I mean they're following the rules. I mean, they're still getting points. It just wasn't the style of dog that we had or we wanted to hunt, really.
Right.
So it was either adapt to the changing times or kind of get out of it, and we kind of got out of it.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. It seems like back in the day, talking to some of these older guys, it seems like it was possible to have a dog that could do both things. That was both a decent competition dog and a meat dog, whether we're talking about rabbit dogs or whether we're talking about coon hunting competitions or whatever.
Yeah.
It seems like more and more you're getting kind of dogs that are specific to one thing. like they're either competition dogs or they're meat, they're fur dogs, they're meat dogs, whatever.
I guess it really depends on the style of hunting you want. I mean, competition dogs move rabbits. I mean, they can get out there and they're quick. They're going to move the rabbits, but it also means you might have a little bit quicker of a snapshot trying to get it up. I mean, it's all in really the hunting style you're looking for. Where if you wanted to kind of like a dual purpose,
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's been one of the things I've been sort of interested in. It's been interesting to see the difference here between here in Norway. A lot of the people that I've talked to, we end up kind of wanting different types of dogs. I like the dog that's kind of slow. I like the dog that's gonna, drag the fox that we get on its feet in at 8 o'clock in the morning. I like the dog that's still going to be on that same fox at 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon.
mm-hmm.
Where that's not necessarily going to be the dog that some other people would choose. And it's I'm always gonna fall on the side of, if I have to pick a dog, it's gonna be the meat dog.
Yeah,
Not to say there's anything wrong at all with these competition dogs. It's not. It's just it's pure preference.
yep,
And it's gonna be a little bit interesting to see, because one of the things about how they do it here is that you're not competing against any other dogs.
yeah,
You're competing against the sort of the set of rules, the set of
yeah.
expectations. You're right, exactly. I guess you start more or less with the maximum number of points that you can possibly have, and then they just sort of deduct with faults. And that is kind of vaguely interesting to me, in the sense that, I'm not going to be competing against anybody else's dog that cuts
Mm-hmm.
corners, or
Yep.
is kind of going out there and
It's front and center and accountable for all the actions.
right, exactly. I there was a dog, I knew about that, would hang behind, would stay close enough to the dogs that jumped the fox. It was a fox dog. And then right at the end, it was sort of insane. Right at the end, it would hop up front. And I
Yep.
mean, that dog won. That dog won everything. But and not taking anything away from the dog, it wasn't a dog that I would have wanted on a,
Mm-hmm.
going out on the weekend with my family or my friends kind of a way. It's like, that's that's not a dog that I would have been confident could have gotten the job done consistently.
Yeah, it may be, in a solo setting, it might be more apt to get out there and put all the work in.
Maybe,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, that's a
yeah,
good point. You never know what it would do on its own.
yeah. I mean, good example of that is, like I said, a guy I got my dogs off of. He's got an old male. It's actually Melody's father. I mean,
Mhm.
we'll be out hunting, get 7, 8 dogs dropped, and he's just kind of milling around the feet and try to get him to go in. He'll kind of lift his nose up and smells like, no, there ain't nothing in there. I'm not even gonna bother, getting scratched up in that pucker brush. But as soon as a certain dog would hark on, I mean, he's gone. He's right into it.
Really? Oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Yep.
It's interesting.
They
Gosh.
even we noticed, if a certain dog's a little sloppy with his bark, kind of barking at everything, he actually ignores it. I mean, he won't even honor that dog.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Huh. Gosh, this is this hound thing is endlessly fascinating. It really
It
is.
is.
It's
Yep. Always learning something.
yeah, it's
Seeing different sights.
every time I mean, especially in the hound things, because I'm so new to it and so green and so, horrendously inexperienced. I've not gotten to the point where I've sort of started to get that feeling that I've got a whole, I've got to kind of got a bead on it all. It's the but there's been a couple of times throughout the years where, I'll admit that my ego got the better of me, and I started to get this kind of feeling that I had a bead on this husky stuff, this sled dog stuff.
Mhm.
And then something would happen that would just set me totally, just knock me for a loop, and it'd be like, I really don't know as much as I thought I did, and it
Stand
was
right up and smack you back into reality.
right, exactly. And sometimes it was, a dog doing something that I didn't like, and sometimes it was a dog doing something that, I had no I had no reason to expect that it would ever have been capable of doing that, and
Mhm.
one really good example of that was I the trails around here, there's one of the trails that drops down onto a lake that is part of a hydroelectric system. So they will, after the ice has settled on the lake, they will drain the lake to create um, electricity.
Mhm.
But then we got this kind of freak thaw, so the water rose above the ice
Huh.
and then froze again. And I was out running dogs, and one of my dogs threw a booty.
Mhm.
And it was a dog that didn't have particularly good feet, so I stopped immediately to put down a hook and went up and replaced the booty and walked back to the sled and was standing at the handlebar, like at the sled, and the ice broke under my feet.
Oh wow.
And it was cold, real cold. And I had a hold of the runner of my sled. And my dogs, they'd never been I'd never trained them to pull big loads. I'd never trained, they pulled me, I'm a big heavy guy, but you know uh, when they felt resistance, I had trained them specifically to, when they felt a lot of resistance, to stop, because I didn't want them to be pulling up the anchor that I used to stop them when I needed to do,
Mhm.
change booties or whatever. When they felt a certain amount of resistance, they would just stand there.
Yeah.
And this time I couldn't get out. The water, I was not hitting the bottom. I could not get out of could not get out of the water myself. And just kind of as calmly as I could, I said, you guys ready? Yeah, let's go. And they hauled me out of there.
Wow.
And it was, heavy, 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 but they never stopped. And it was much, much, much heavier hauling me out of the broken ice than, hauling me out of the lake than anything they'd done that winter, where I
Yeah.
had trained them
Just.
the entire winter to not pull when it got that heavy, because I didn't want them dragging the hook out of the snow,
Mhm.
and I asked them to go with really, it was kind of an act of desperation. It was like I did not expect them to do it, and they did.
Well, I'm glad they did.
Oh gosh, me too. And I mean, it was cold. Like by the time I got back, my boots had frozen, my pants had frozen, my jacket had frozen. So I ended up taking all of the dogs out of the team and putting them into the dog box in the dog trailer with their harnesses on, and then driving home, and I needed to hop in the shower to thaw out to thaw
Wow.
out my clothes and my boots, to be able to get out of the clothes that I'd gone through the ice in, because it had all frozen into this
Wow.
big clump of ice. But it's
Huh.
it's that was in a period where things were clicking pretty well, and I was starting to feel like I had a real handle on this. And these guys showed me that, they showed me that I had no clue. in what they were able to, what they were actually capable of. And I just find the working dog world to be just endlessly fascinating.
I would agree. Definitely agree.
Yeah. So when are you picking up your male pup? Is that something that's going to happen pretty soon, or is that year or
Nothing's
so
in the
down the road?
works. Kind of filling out a couple of different breeders right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my hope is within the next year to 18 months get them. I'm not in a super hurry, but definitely I don't want to be going out too many years.
And you're looking at a pup?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Start from scratch.
What qualities are you looking for in terms of sort of fleshing out your pack? What are you hoping to find?
Well, with the dynamic of melody and cadence, I kind of got the one little bit of speed, one little bit slower. So I could go either way
Mm-hmm.
and have breeding opportunities. So it's kind of see what presents itself and take it from there.
Right. Oh, cool. Oh, it sounds like you've got some exciting years ahead of you.
I hope so. Definitely looking forward to getting the kiddos out and watching them grow and the pack grow, and I'll have a good time.
Oh, that sounds excellent. Well, Clint, we are up over right about an hour and a half here. So
Oh wow.
I think we might yeah, gosh, it goes so quick. It's the first podcast I did here was with Doug McMahon, and I think that ended up being like 2.5 hours. Like, but it went by in a blink.
Wow.
And I love talking to you guys. It's so much fun, and it just goes by way too quickly. But I really appreciate you hanging in there. We had so many issues making this podcast happen. We set this
few
one
months
up
in the making.
Oh my gosh, I think we set this one up 3 or 4 months ago, and then I don't know in what order these things happened, but like I got COVID was one thing that happened, and then there was some work issues that happened, and then some sort of technical issues that killed us the last time, and it took us a little while to get this one squared away, but I really appreciate you hanging in there, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking beagles with me.
Oh no, not a problem. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, feelings mutual, so we'll looking forward to hearing about what happens in the future, and we'll catch up to you at some point here.
Likewise, buddy.
All right, see you later.
Yeah.
Man, I love that sound.